In this collaboration with Quant Papa, like I was pointing out to Mike Cornwell, I saw some things that was very interesting. For one, Quant Papa, you used the Overledger? What the heck? You know, you have to have a certain amount of QNT in order to be able to do that. So that's kind of interesting in itself. So you're going to see some things maybe you guys never seen before. And that's cool, right? We're all interested in what Quant's doing, especially taking out, taking a real look at like the actual Overledger, screenshots, the whole shebang. What you see in the thumbnail is a true thing. Quant, XDC, even IOTA. I was like, whoa, what is that all about? Before we get to the specifics of that, let's go ahead and just get into the outline that we have for you tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this up. And believe it or not, this is a screenshot straight from Quant Papa's computer. And like you see, what does this share? What does it have? Well, it is the Overledger. He's logging into the Overledger. And what do you see on your screen? You see that you have this Overledger instance, like it says Sandbox. Currently, only the Sandbox Overledger instance is available for transaction signing. The Sandbox instance is used for test network access. Technology, drop down for Ethereum. But look at the networks, right? We showed a demo about this before on a video. You guys seen it, right? Where the Overledger network, or the OVN technically, or the OVL, I should say, Overledger, can quickly switch to the XRP ledger. Ethereum goes down. The beautiful thing about being blockchain agnostic is that the Overledger can quickly switch to another particular network. And so we showed in regards to XRP. And some of you guys have mentioned in the past, well, what about some of these other ones? What about XDC? The answer is yes. How do we know that? Well, once again, I'll come out of the frame, show it again. I'll drop it down for you. And there it is. It's actually not just XDC, as you see on the bottom. You also see Polygon. And that's interesting. It's always interesting to point some of those things out. Quant Papa, he's logging into, obviously, the Overledger. What the heck? But there it is, right? And it kind of gives you a quick little thing about how this all works. I mean, I thought it was interesting. Overledger instance, Sandbox, or the production. Look at this. Select the technology type of the blockchain you want to read. A smart contracts platform. Just blew it up a little bit bigger for you guys so you can see it on a full screen. I think this is interesting. If you follow Quant, you know why this is interesting. So, you see all this stuff here. And for instance, it mentions select the specific blockchain network you want to read a smart contract function from. Note that the testnets can only be accessed from the Overledger Sandbox instance, and mainnets can only be accessed from the Overledger production instance. And, again, Quant Papa, you got the hookup, right? Apparently he does. So when you get more into this, let's take you over to here. Talks about a bridge for tokens. Look at this for a second. Intro. You want to reach new markets, transact with new counterparts, tap new investors? Is the network you choose when launching your token originally providing or proving too costly or slow, hampering your transactional efficiency? Did you launch your token on a private network? And let's just take a pause on that for a second. I'm going to come back in the screen. Private network. Now, one thing I want to point out to you guys is this, right? We are so impressed when it comes to BSV's technology. Absolutely. Whether you guys think that, Dr. Craig Wright is a charlatan or not, there's no denying some of the reports. 1 million plus TPS, in some cases even higher than that, 2 million. We know they're going to scale to billions, and if not trillions of TPS. That's worth pointing out. When we get more into this, you're going to see in regards to the RLN, you're going to see the whole thing about M10, once again, that we covered, and the whole thing of Quant being able to do, for instance, 1 million plus TPS with what they're connected to, okay? Here's another thing I want to point out. Now, we put so much emphasis on public networks. We know that Quant works with the big banks. We know that when it comes to like JP Morgan and so on, JP Morgan is more privatized, right? And they have private networks and so on. How does something like Quant's Overledger help JP Morgan And some of these other ones basically scale up when they need to scale up. We're going to get into all that nitty gritty here in a bit because it's definitely worth pointing out. Now, getting more into this for a second, look what it says. The problem until now is that a token created on one network was stuck there, created a wall garden of missed opportunity. Overledger solves this without you needing to write a single line of code. Overledger Bridge creates a secure connection between two supported networks so you can transfer quant flex. Yes, let's flex like Arnold, do it. Tokens between those networks. We make this complex process simple and transparent since you can track the tokens at every stage. Now, later on, when we get into the stellar coverage, yes, stellar in regards to IETF, Internet Engineering Task Force, and even SATP, traditionally speaking, we always just talk about quant in regards to that. I would stick around for that segment. It says built to the highest existing internet standards, such as the Internet Engineering Task Force and ISO standard TC307, which we help shape. Bridge creates a secure bridge that will remain in place for as long as your Overledger plan remains active. With Overledger Bridge, your tokens are future-proof. How many times did you hear Gilbert Verdian mention the Internet of Value, the Internet Trust, and if anything, is your project future-proof? This bottom part here is crucial to understand. This is why I wanted to share this with you tonight. It says contact us, as in the Overledger network, to discuss connecting private networks or to connect to currently unsupported networks. How many times over the course of many months now have we talked about, especially when it comes to BSV, could Quant potentially connect to something like BSV? I think the answer is yes. They, who's part of the bigger conglomerate, would just simply have to request that. As we know, it's all about supply and demand. Quant isn't just going to work on things that are not requested. If there's enough supply and demand for it, they'll work on it. But that's interesting to see that option. And when we get more into this, before we actually get more into this, how about this? You guys have mentioned for a couple years, you would like to see XDC on the list. We now see XDC on the list. And the other one I discovered today was IOTA. Now, I knew that there was possibility of Polygon, because that made sense, with Polygon, providing a different layer in regards to, or solution compared to Ethereum. So that almost seemed like it was a given. But to see IOTA part of that mix was like interesting, because we also know that IOTA is part of ISO 222. And, big things can happen at the end of 2025. We're not at the stellar segment tonight, but there is some news in regards to 2025. You want to stick around for the interview of Jed McCaleb with Danelle Dixon. And guess what, guys? That was posted earlier today, so it's fresh. Getting more into the outline that we have tonight for you. A little bit of notes, screenshots taken from the one and only Quant Papa. Can Overledger connect to any blockchain? Well, we know the answer to that. Yes. If you would like to connect to a blockchain not currently supported, contact us. Once again, contact us. I'm honestly thinking that when Gilbert Verdian, Martin Hargreaves, and the rest of the team basically said, we allow for interoperability, we're blockchain agnostic, and we can, basically interoperate with 100 plus blockchains, they weren't messing around with that statement. Showing you another example of this. Here's a quote for Mr. Verdian himself. I'm going to come out of the frame for this one. He states this right here. Mr. Gilbert Verdian. No, it is very different. ILP, as in the Interledger Protocol, is a peer-to-peer protocol for payments between different assets and different blockchains, doing hash time locks and whatever. Ripple and Bitcoin are one of the early use cases. That is good for a payment use case. But what we are doing is, if you think of ILP as you are sending a message between you and your friend, it is the interaction between you two in terms of the two parties. What we are doing, as in the Quant network, is the core level. Don't let this fly past your head. Think about this. How does that one network have a gateway to understand and find resources to another network? which also has a gateway. How do those networks talk to each other at the internet scale level? Think of it as a border gateway protocol for money. So, guys, I want to state this real quick. It's not just what we are invested in regards to retail. This is why it's beautiful to recognize what Quant is doing. It allows scalability. We're going to give some more examples just in case you're a new person who never heard of RLN or M10, for instance, and the concept of what Quant can access to allow over 1,000,000 TPS. The key thing is this: when you see statements, even in regards to Stellar, of being able to scale up, people have criticized Stellar and said, well, come on, 1,000 or 1,500 TPS or even Ripple, that's not going to really get the job done. The point is, the examples used through Overledger will allow even those to get scalability done through the Overledger network. It's a beautiful thing. Check this out for a second. BGP is quite a good technology, and it works. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more if you can see it better. And it mentions specifically, we as in Quant Network, creating the protocol and the methodology to find and identify networks. With ILP, again, back to Interledger Protocol, you are sending something from Ripple to Bitcoin. You know where they are, but on the internet scale, how do you know where the digital asset or the party B is that you want to send to? You need to find them. You need to find the route between the different networks to identify that digital asset and how you transact across those gateways. That is what is happening, what is much, much larger. Can I explain it to you guys in layman's terms? I can. I want you to pay attention to this part. This is absolutely crucial if you understand any concept of Quant or you're on the verge of getting into Quant, you want to learn more. So I hold Chainlink. A lot of you guys hold Chainlink. Chainlink is identified as being what? The king of oracles. Should Quant be labeled as the king of gateways or the gateway operator for both public and private? My answer is yes. And we're going to get a little bit more in regards to that. So check this out. Let's share this. This is again from Quant Papa. So Quant Papa mentions remote connector gateways 1.0, for instance, right? This is back in the early days of Overledger. Known as Overledger gateways at the time were based on experimental and proprietary peer-to-peer protocols and tightly integrated with the Overledger 1 architecture, right? That's 1.0 and higher. The 1.0 RCGs went into performance testing late 2019 with a public testing in June 2020. They, as in the Quant Network, have been reviewing the feedback, and of course, back then, the performance of RCG 1.0 design moved for a more robust and standardized framework converting routing, token economics, staking, pricing, and transactions. They updated the RCGS for the Overledger 2.0 architecture and higher in preparation for ODAP and removed the legacy peer-to-peer functionality as the longer-term strategy moved away from peer-to-peer backend gateways to what? Look at this. This is the juicy part you want. Whole over ledger instances being able to connect in a peer-to-peer fashion in a standards-based way using the Open Digital Asset Protocol, ODAP. That right there, my friends, is your best example of why Quant is the king of gateways. If Chainlink wants to boast being king of oracles, that's fine. Again, I'm not trying to create tribalism because I hold it too. I'm rooting for Chainlink. Quant is the king of gateways. Not even close. Not even close at all. When we talk about the plumbing, this is the standard for all of the internet, Web3's plumbing. Let me show you another example here in a bit. We just mentioned the whole thing about M10. Check this out. The hierarchical ledger is immutable and operated by proprietary, tomato, permission blockchain, because it is permission nature and because it was purposely designed and built in bank credit and debits. The throughput of the M10 ledger is high, over 1 million transactions per second, but with sub-second latency. You pointed that out before. Here's another example. This is straight from the M10 site. This is just a screenshot. I definitely want to share this with you again. You have these examples from a direct CBDC. Remember how we talked about, like, for instance, with blockchain, there's, like, Polkadot layer zeros, and then there's, like, for instance, layer ones, layer twos. Look at this for a second. Direct CBDC, M0, customer, customer, customer. Indirect CBDCs, M1 is 1-1 backed by M0. You have, the issuance of the central banks, like, central bank A, B, and C. Brings it down to M1, bank A, B, and C. The customers. How about a hybrid CBDCs? Same type of approach, different layers. So they use the fundamental blueprint, if you will, the foundation of what blockchain DLT technology is all about. Getting more into this, I want to share this with you. This is a screenshot from the M10 site that we were just talking about. You have, for instance, apps that run through the central bank administrative app, okay? Gives some of those accounts. You ever wondered how this would all look? So this is the central bank views. You're now seeing an example as if you were, Augustine Carstens or somebody like that from the BIS. How would you actually like to be able to look at it for a second, So you see here these examples, the funding institutions, how much they have to hold on their balance sheets, et cetera, et cetera. Getting into a little bit more about this. Here's another example of the dashboard. Just kind of giving you guys some examples from m10.retool.com. And this is now straight from the M10 site. You can see it for yourself over at m10.io/technology. Like it says, the technology powering M10 brings tokenization, hierarchical, I'm not pronouncing it right, ledger, and more. It says learn more. We are learning more. Look at this for a second. Remember how Larry Fink was always talking about tokenization? The M10 platform tokenizes regulated liabilities. Regulated liabilities? Such as central bank money, commercial bank money, e-money. Tokenized liabilities are simply digital representations of an underlying liability held by a regulated financial institution. The tokenized liabilities are fungible with the network, meaning a tokenized euro from Bank A can be used at Bank B, an e-money provider, or exchange for a tokenized central bank euro. What has Quant basically done in regards to, digital pounds, digital euros? The same mechanism can be used to issue new money, such as central bank digital currency, CBDCs. Look at this for a second. Gives a whole example and a breakdown of how this is all represented, how it works with CBDCs. And I've gone over this in the past, but there again, just in case if you're new. And this part, we have talked about the Regulated Liability Network over and over, the RLN. It's a fractional reserve banking system. And look at this for a second. The hierarchical ledger, probably not pronouncing that right, is immutable, operated by a proprietary permission blockchain. Because of its permission nature, and because it was purposely designed for, or I should say, and built for bank credit and debits, the throughput of the M10 ledger is high. Over 1 million transactions per second with sub-second latency. Wow. And they even have a performance report on that. And you can go view it for yourself. Now, this part is crucial as well. We have to have functionality for offline payments. Remember how Stellar was talking about that? So while the M10 system is an account-based system, offline payments are possible. Yes, they're currently possible. Payments can be performed between offline devices and eventually reconciled with the online system upon synchronization. Talks about public keys. I'm not going to get to that because I did it before. This part is crucial to know as well. Scalability. How many times have we talked about scalability? You can't have an issue where, people are going to be stuck in the mud, especially when it comes to their funds. Old Max has to have the same, access and same performance as the Tim Shays and the Brian Dowies and the Michael Cornwells of the world, right? Absolutely. So on this example, M10 system can process over 1 million payments per second, like it says, at latency less than 1 second. The level of performance can be delivered with a small number of instances, making M10 a payment system with a minimal carbon footprint. This is where other particular blockchains, I'm not saying BSV and so on, but other ones out there, people have reported, especially when it comes to like even Solana, right? Solana can apparently do like 28,000 TPS and so on. Is there a carbon footprint? Well, with Hedera, there isn't, right? There isn't a carbon footprint. It's one of the most greenest ones out there. And if anything, tomorrow we're going to get more into Hedera, okay? Look at this. Here's some more examples. So I'm going to come out of the frame on this one as well. You will see this. I think it's crucial to understand this. M10, implementing a regulated liabilities network, right? The RLN. Martin Nelson, Richard Char, and Cheyenne. We'll get to some people here in a second. M10 security, M10 performance report, goes over to this side, system overview of the M10 platform. Recognize the names here. Why is that? Well, for one, I want to share you this. At the very top of the screenshot, you see where it says M10 implementing a regulated liabilities network. Now, this executive summary is crucial to understand, especially this guy, Tony McLaughlin, and the Quant connection. I'm going to share this with you for just a moment. So on this one, I thought I would get more into this. So in previous deep dives, we have talked about the RLN, and we talked about Citi and all the bigger players and so on. So back in 2021, it is true that Citi did in fact release a paper entitled The Regulated Internet of Value. And in that specific paper, authored by Tony McLaughlin, who's head of emerging payments and business developments at Citi's Treasury and Trade Solutions, in the Citi paper, the author makes a case for networks of regulated liabilities and assets. It goes on to mention that the liabilities, the regulated liabilities, I should say, would include central bank money. Now, in previous blockchain conferences, I think even at Davos 2022 and 2023, Gilbert Verdian was interviewed, and he briefly touched basis on some of this stuff. But it does include the whole notion of central bank money, commercial bank money, electronic money, and how it's all tokenized and how it comes all together on a distributed ledger technology. In this case, will Overledger connect it all? The answer is yes. And exchangeable on financial networks. Look at this. In that Citi paper, if you choose to nerd it out, you will find out, like it says, it has an essential contribution to the payments literature, as is the first articulation of a regulated liabilities network, or RLN. While the author states that, quote, creation of such networks may seem to be a pipe dream, this paper is intended to be a companion to the Citi paper and demonstrate how a seeming pipe dream can be realized today. Back to everything I was just talking about earlier. I was talking about the plumbing, the pipes. The plumbing and the pipes is literally the Overledger network because it is the king of gateways. And we've seen some examples. Boy, have we seen some examples of how that works. So if the Citi paper describes the what of RLN, like it says, this paper attempts to explain our vision of the how. And Quant's connected to all that? Quant is doing that? Yes, they're doing that. Back to this whole thing about Tony McLaughlin. I did a few deep dives in regards to Finastra. Quant Papa and I brought it together. Didn't exactly get a lot of views at the time. Who cares? The point is, all the material is there for whoever wants to look more into it. The reason why it's so big is this particular statement that you see on your screen right now if you're tuned in. Quant's your thing. Please smash the like. You will like what you will find out here, even if you feel as though you already know about it. There's some things I want to expand for you on these subjects tonight. Tony McLaughlin is responsible for emerging payments and business development in Citi's Treasury and Trade Solutions. Trade Solutions. What did we mention at the beginning of the outline tonight? Overledger from the demo. Thank you so much, Quant Papa, for showing and exposing to the world that you literally use the Overledger, which tells me you probably have at least 200 QNT, something like that. Maybe I shouldn't mention that, but I'm just saying you have to have money to be able to use the Overledger. But the point is this. Thank you, because you want to know something? Trade Solutions. So that example, Quant Papa giving us of, hey, there's a little drop down thing to select XDC. XDC heavily tied into trade, is it not? Yes, it is. So if ish goes south and we need to go and switch to something else, isn't it beautiful that Quant can get off Ethereum immediately, just like that? And we know that in regards to a demo. And if Quant wants to quickly go to XTC, boom, XTC, or Polygon, or some of these other ones, IOTA. It's all there. But we're going to talk about this for just a moment in regards to trade. So, this guy, Tony McLaughlin, is he a nothing burger? No, he's not a nothing burger. In this screenshot, I know it's small, Tony McLaughlin, the regulated Internet of Value, M10 cited. So, what is this all really about? I'd be asking that. And if anything, I'm going to come out of the frame. So, why is the RLN the future of settlement? Think about this, guys. Think about it for a second. We always talk about, especially when it comes to XRP, real-time gross settlements. What if you have a platform that can settle in anything you needed to settle in? If things go south, if things disappear, networks go down like Solana, can you take bankers' money and settle in something else? The answer is yes. But why RLN? And why is that the future of settlement? Like it says, the RLN is a revolutionary type of network because it seeks to overcome the challenges posed by traditional clearing, right? Think about clearinghouses and so on, guys. Settlement systems, often siloed, like Gilbert Vernon has always mentioned, slow, with a lot of risk. Such legacy systems are sequential in nature, leading to expensive manual reconciliations and inherent latencies. This not only stunts innovation, but also locks potential value across markets. Now, in regards to RLN, look what it says, and it's also bolded for you. The RLN, based on distributed ledger technology, could radically optimize data use, reduce the need for reconciliation, accelerate delivery and payment timelines, and dramatically improve overall data and use of that and the quality and so on. Let me come out of the frame for a moment, take a pause here. Okay. So, some people are going to look at this and they're going to look at it from the bigger picture of things and they're going to say to themselves, well, the examples that you gave, Max, in regards to XTC with trade, it's good examples, but it's just coincidence. I don't think it's coincidence. Here's why it's not coincidence. For also the reason of IOTA. Everything that IOTA does is literally mentioned, if you think about it, at the top of what RLN is listing here. Why is that a big deal? Well, you know what? We're going to get more into that. So I do think this is worth pointing out. And I do think it's great that the Overledger can quickly switch to IOTA. But this whole thing of accelerating delivery, payment timelines, dramatically improve overall data and its use and quality for any market or any asset class. It also provides a secure framework for transactions that ensure the delivery of assets and data only to intended recipients, maintains a mutable record of all transactions across all accounts, and allows each entity to net its obligations while granting participants access to real-time pertinent information. My God. I got to read these other two areas real quick. By incorporating all aspects of sovereign currency and ensuring interoperability across different regulated issuers, the RLN presents the potential for a new global settlement infrastructure. You guys want to talk about the New World Order and the new monetary system? The new monetary system, you guys, has to have new infrastructure, right? We know that. RLN, Quant, connecting everything to it. It addresses a broader range of use cases than narrower proposals while maintaining the two-tier structure of public and regulated private balance sheets. This is where Quant shines, you guys, because it's not just dealing with the public ones, but also the private ones. The RLN also has the potential to incorporate multiple currencies to solve what? Cross-border payment efficiency and represent multiple asset types. Geez, did we see example of that in regards to the Overledger on the drop down? Yes, we did. And that was just scratching the surface. That's just the tip of the iceberg. As such, it provides a solution to the missing piece of the global financial puzzle. A global solution for what, guys? Settlement. For settlement. This solves the whole thing of having just to go with traditional clearinghouses. Thus, the RLN represents a revolutionary step in the future of banking settlement, promising a future that leverages the potential of blockchain tech for a more efficient, inclusive, and compliant financial system. My God. You know, I was watching that video, was it from Nick of Encash Official? Remember how he's talking? If you guys saw that video, the last two videos he was doing, he specifically mentions, watch out for Hedera. They already, cross their T's. They already dot their I's because they put a lot of emphasis on being compliant. Who also put a lot of emphasis on being compliant? Who wrote the standards in regards to compliancy? Yeah, Gilbert Verdin in the ISO TC 307 standard. Look at this. It is a vision of a future where financial transactions are not just faster and more efficient, but also more transparent, secure future where the full potential digital currencies and distributed ledgers are able to blossom. I know that part is cut off. I'm going to show you guys just a tad bit more in regards to this. And I won't be on the frame on this one either, but it doesn't matter. What are some of the key considerations for an RLN system? Well, there's a lot. RLN should ultimately be able to tokenize and exchange all types of those regulated liabilities, central bank money, commercial bank money, and like we mentioned, electronic money, but even stable coins. And when we get into the Stellar segment, you will see why that's important. And cryptocurrencies, if and when regulated, well, it will be. However, the purpose of this paper, we focus primarily on central bank money and commercial bank money. We believe that will be the foundation to most of the RLNs. Right, this is the big institutional money, you guys. The functions of the M10 platform that we describe below apply to all regulated liabilities. The shared hierarchical ledger. A key requirement for RLN system is to be able to tokenize both central bank money issued to commercial banks and commercial bank money issued to bank customers. So they're covering both areas, just like Quant covers both retail and also the private, even though they mentioned their focus isn't on retail. And M10, we implement through the use of shared hierarchical ledgers. The central bank portion of the ledger is called M0, and the commercial bank portion of the ledger is called M1. Again, guys, it's the same concept as a retail blockchain, right? When we look at like layer zeros, layer ones, layer twos, right? But this is what on the institutional side of things. M0 and M1 are distinct but join in a hierarchical fashion. How so? Like we see right here, central bank ledger connecting to M0 for central banks to issue to commercial banks and M1 for commercial banks to issue to their customers. Look at this part. In this white paper, we explain how the M10 platform can be used to implement the RLN, a concept first articulated by who? Boom. Boil it, mash it, stick it in the stew. Once again, Tony McLaughlin over at Citi. And by the way, when we talked about Finastra, we talked about some of these other things and these connections. It's not just Quant, also like XRP and some of these other things, right? Mr. McLaughlin states that, quote, the creation of such networks may seem like a pipe dream. Remember how we also quoted that. So again, it's there for you again. Let's get into this part. I know it's a lot of Quant, but this is good stuff, and it's going to get better here in a second. Look at this. So this is another example of this solution, okay? And if anything, we're going to get into that here in a bit. I believe this is, yeah, let me get into this. So just a second. Make sure that we're on the right page. So you see here, central bank sovereign bond issuers, solution by Shareable Liberty Consortium. The bonds, the tokenizations, the trading platforms, custody wallets. You know, when you hear Larry Fink talk about all this, to see a breakdown, a visualization, I think is crucial. What about the API gateway? Look at how this kicks it to something else. CBDC Sandbox, Parsher, MasterCard. Interesting. Retail investor, CBDC wallet kicks it over to the bond issuer. Then you also have this whole thing, the blockchain network. Far left side, retail investors. Far right side, off-ramp payment solutions. ePay, cold wallet solution, eWallet. It's an overview of the solution by Shareable Liberty Consortium. Let me just show you a little bit more about this, okay? So you have the user who's just using their phone. How's this all broke down? Well, you have banking applications, software development kits. That's what SDK stands for. User breaks it down to account management, identity, device management, card wallet management, so on and so forth. What's the gateway? Well, think about it. You have these modules, card issuance, user management, retail payment ledgers, custodians, so on and so forth. Then from there, a CBDC blockchain infrastructure. What would be plugging into that, guys? It already exists. This is why Bank of International Settlements, Bank of England, heck, even was it Bank of Spain that we recently talked about, got all involved in Quant, because Quant is that gateway to bring it all together. And on the very bottom, what do you see? This presentation sets forth the current vision for CBDC Go and is solely for discussion purposes. Well, we're discussing it now, aren't we not? These services are in development. Service availability, features, functionality, and timing remain subject to change. This is before the whole thing went live with what, guys? Project Rosalind. So they already got there. They already been there. Already done that. A little bit more in regards to RLN real quick. RLN, is interoperable with existing payment systems through the connectivity supported by private participants. Participation by multiple central banks will achieve the liquidity bridges necessary to reform cross-border payments, connect to external blockchains, enabling cross-chain interoperability. Isn't that Quant from beginning to end? Yes, it's Quant from beginning to end. Look at this. This bottom part. For the Global CBDC Challenge, RLN has successfully demonstrated several use cases, including what? Fungibility between retail CBDC and tokenized private sector liabilities. Transfers between private sector players that are settled in CBDC on the network. Multi-asset capability between tokenized money and tokenized securities. All these things are what is referenced from Larry Fink of BlackRock. He literally mentioned these word for word. So the whole thing about, well, Quant isn't directly working with JP Morgan. Yeah, they are. You just don't know about it. It's on the back end through a private network. What is the network? It's Quant working with M10, working with the RLN. And this is all verifiable. You can look all of the information up for yourself if you choose to do so. Look at this. Have to reference this because it was part of the thumbnail. Remember how we talked about, for instance, Quant, World Bank? Yes, we did talk about that. So you see here the World Bank, IBRD, IDEA. You got some of these other big players. Look who's mentioned on the bottom. MasterCard, Parcher, R3, Hyperledger. Interesting. Look at this for a second. Let's go to the next part. I'll come out of the frame once again on this one. Sorry about that. So why choose Ledger Swarm? Now, I covered this before a long time ago. There's a lot of new people here, and I do appreciate you guys being here tonight. But what is interesting to notate is this top part. Kind of like Quant is not a blockchain. They're blockchain agnostic, right? You got to look at Quant as being the Microsoft of crypto. It's a blockchain operating system. It's literally the standard for blockchain. So Ledger Swarm is not just another blockchain solution. It is the best implementation of the RLN concept in the market, demonstrated to work at an astonishing 1 million transaction settlements per second because it's connected to what? M10. We've already went over that. Ledger Swarm is also what? Ledger agnostic. See how we have common things here? Quant, blockchain agnostic. Ledger Swarm, ledger agnostic, meaning it's interoperable across different DLT and traditional platforms. Wow. So I mean, even just like Quant, the private side and the public side? Yes, on private and public side of things, ensuring easy adoption without the need to replace existing core banking systems. It guarantees privacy through private consensus among transaction participants while providing immutable reconciliation between participants. Now, this last part, with its built-in interoperable smart contract layer, think about that. Ledger Swarm is truly a trailblazer in the world of real-time settlements. So what do we know in regards to Stellar lately? this whole big deal about Sorbonne. What happens if Stellar needs to scale up? Well, they can scale up through everything that you've seen through here, right? This whole notion that Stellar is not going to solve a problem that exists with its current throughput of what is it, 1500 TPS, whatever the case be, this allows them to get the job done for all the examples that we basically listed. This is why it's like I'm not going to be a maxi on one thing. I understand that Sorbonne is going to be huge. I also think this is huge. You know, we talk about quant being the plumbing, it literally is. So the other statement that you saw here for a brief moment, and basically is this, it's about the whole thing of where it says, you know, ensuring easy adoption without the need to replace existing core banking systems, guarantees privacy through private consensus among transaction participants. I mean, what if networks go down like we mentioned before? I mean, that'd be crazy. But I mean, you know, we have seen this happen with Solana, and it's only been brief, but it's happened a few times. So my thing is this: when we talk about things being future proof, some people don't really understand what that really means. Quant has allowed that functionality to happen because they are future proof by quickly switching to different networks. When you see all this stuff here mentioned in regards to privacy, private consensus, protecting data, and then you see that drop down for IOTA. What does IOTA specialize in? Well, if you think about it, a lot of things are like what Jasmy's trying to do. But this is IOTA. And IOTA is also part of what? ISO 222. And we know that ISO TC 307, the Quant Network Standard, also works with ISO 222. So they already crossed their T's and dot their I's in regards to that as well. That is huge. That is absolutely huge. All right, back to this whole thing of Tony McLaughlin. So this guy, man, this guy is like really well connected, is he not? So what you see here is definitely worth pointing out, at least in my eyes. And again, it says that he is responsible for emerging payments in business development at Citi. He is certainly convinced and was quick to point out that those benefits can also be delivered by tokenized commercial bank money. Why did the core ledger for Project Rosalind only include central bank money? The core ledger, back to what those references we had at the beginning of the outline in regards to the core API gateway. The core API gateway is Quant. Who chose Quant? Project Rosalind. Who was part of that? The BIS, Bank of England. You guys already know the deal. Why not include commercial bank money too and let that be the catalyst for innovative use cases? Yeah. So many people have complained about Quant not going to like, you know, $1,000 per token yet and all this stuff. Guys, we will get there. It doesn't happen overnight. Even with Jasmy, it doesn't happen overnight. I did point out, though, in regards to Jasmy, that I had a feeling that they'll be the first. Again, look at the areas of the world, right? And this is, if anything, I think Nick of Encash Officials, right? He was talking about what? He was talking specifically that Hedera, especially with Europe, tokenized bonds through European bonds and stuff like that, stable coins and so on. That well positions Hedera, different areas of the world other than the United States. That is the bigger picture, and understanding that we will have our time here in the U.S. And this is where I'm still going to always focus on. I'd rather be more excited about full-fledged implementation by the end of 2025 compared to just focusing on the now. But I get it. A lot of people get impatient when it comes to this stuff. But if you've been into more than one bull run, you know how this goes. All right, so let's jump over to this. I want to mention this real quick before we kick into another subject. It says, in this white paper, we explain how the M10 platform can be used to implement the RLN, a concept first articulated by who, guys? Yes, Tony McLaughlin. Interesting. Very, very interesting. All right. Now, this part. This is some of the juicy. These guys here. Wow. This particular conference It was a few years back. Private meetings. Hope I don't get in trouble for sharing this, but Quant Papa said I could share it. So what you're going to see here is maybe something you haven't seen anywhere else. I think it's a big deal. Does it show Gilbert Verdian? Is he invited? Yeah, he is. Listen to what is mentioned here. We'll just keep it there for the Verdian part, because this thing is like at least 2 hours long. I don't want to get into all that. You have to hear what Gilbert Verdian has mentioned in regards to all of the standards, his history with the IETF, but if anything, confirming some of the things that we mentioned tonight and why it's going to be huge moving forward from here. If Quant's your thing, please smash the like, share the show, educate people about why Quant is such a big deal, because it really, really, truly is. Appreciate you guys for being here. Let's go ahead and watch this. This is the one and only Mr. Gilbert Verdian of the Quant Network talking about the bigger picture with these particular guys, standards, and how it all comes together and why that's a big deal. Here we go.
Then we will answer the questions during the panel discussion. Thank you. And then I have the honor to introduce the next speakers who will tell us about interoperability and governance in blockchain. So Mr. Gilbert Verdian, the convener or the chair of the ISO Technical Committee 307. So with the over 20 years of the cybersecurity experience and the C-level accountability as a CISO, CIO, and CTO, Mr. Verdian is a recognized pioneer in cybersecurity and the TLTs. So he also run his own business. Thank you, Gilbert, for your time and also effort. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I will just quickly share the screen. Okay, thank you so much for the kind introduction. My name is Gilbert Verdian. I'd like to talk about interoperability and governance, especially in relation to standards and the work that's been done in ISO and how we're collaborating to help make DLT and blockchain mainstream and wider use. So I'd like to just give you a quick history of the ISO standard. So as was mentioned, I have a history in cybersecurity, working in government, financial services. And during the financial crisis, I was at the Treasury here in the UK. And that's when, if you remember, it was a very dire time for the whole world. And that's when the Satoshi paper comes out. It really interested me as a cybersecurity person very early on. I introduced it to the rest of my peers in the government, and we were the first country to look at blockchain officially back in 2008. So it was quite an early view of the technology and the potential.
Are we not paying attention to this? Did you not just hear what he said back in 2008? And he is literally, and I'll play the rest of this, I swear, this will probably be the only interruption. I just want to put some emphasis on this. 2008. We know that, the Bitcoin white paper wasn't even popularized until about 2009. So he's looking at some of this stuff, maybe before we in retail hear about it. Then the other thing, introducing it to these guys, talking about standards, talking about the bigger picture. But what was the key thing he meant or said? To allow all of this for crypto and you name it, right? Distributed ledger technologies, blockchain, for it to go mainstream. All right, we're gonna play a little bit more about that. I just got to point some of that stuff out, just in case it goes right past your head. Here we go.
If you fast forward, the technology was evolving. You could see around 2014, the concept of blockchain was being talked about, and new technologies were emerging, around Ethereum or other type of new blockchains, another generation of blockchains. Around 2015, I went from the UK government to the Australian government, and I was working as the Chief Security Officer there, and I had a concept at the Department of Health, and I had a concept of using blockchain for secure communication for health records, and that's where I saw the challenge and the problem of the industry. We were building blockchain in isolation. It was being built in silos. The technology was evolving on its own. It wasn't being collaborative, and I wanted to bring harmonization to the technology. So I started talking about an interconnectivity of blockchain to achieve interoperability, and that's when the ISO people at Standards Australia approached me and said, "Can we turn this idea into a standard?" And ended up establishing the blockchain ISO standard TC307 in 2015, and we had it approved. And that's when we kicked off. So what I wanted to talk about is, the challenges of building things in isolation and being proprietary, and how to unlock that through interoperability and the right governance. So if you remember, before blockchain, we kind of had the same problem in technology in other generations. We did the same with databases. We did the same with different types of mainframes and microcomputers, and we did the same with the internet very early on with online service providers. So we had closed ecosystems that couldn't communicate. And Craig just mentioned, now you can email everyone, the standards around email. Whereas before, if you wanted to email, you were only allowed into your own community. You couldn't go outside of your ecosystem until TCP/IP and SMTP and other protocols that were standards allowed us to have the internet of today. So my question to blockchain was, why are we making the same mistakes as the past? So in 2015, there was lots of need to create some sort of a standard for blockchain, and that's where ISO came in. So this was the actual proposal back in 2015 that was put together, and it was around creating a governance framework, creating an interoperability capability, and allowing a regulatory compliance around blockchain. So the technical side can be easily done because the regulations and the governance is already accepted at the top layer. So that was what was proposed back in 2015. The areas that we needed to look at, what I wrote was around terminology, interoperability, privacy, security, authentication, etc. And this is the first meeting that we had back in Sydney in 2017. This was the first inaugural plenary. I think we had 120 delegates from all around the world, and it was quite a good and successful launch to what we're doing. So if you look at standards, they're a great way to collaborate and bring harmonization. At the level, there's national, there's regional type of standards. So at the ISO, IEC level, there's country level standards, and then underneath you've got different types of technical, professional type of standards that all feed into each other. So looking at this, what we're doing in TC307 is we're building these types of standards already. So the work kicked off in 2017. It's been a very active committee to TC307. We have hundreds and hundreds of members from all around the world working on all of these different types of standards and different working groups. And so already some are published. And as Craig was mentioning, there's going to be another one around IP. So there'll be an IP standard around blockchain. But all the work and the effort since 2017 has already kicked off. And if you look at the makeup and the different committees, this is what is happening today. So we have some internal committees, but we also have the working groups that are looking at the foundational side of blockchain, terminology of reference architecture, etc., security, privacy, smart contracts, governance, interoperability, use cases, etc. So all of these are underway, and everyone is free to join ISO. You go through your national committee. If you're in the UK, you join BSI. If you're in Australia, for example, you join Standards Australia, and through your committees and national bodies, you come in and be an expert within ISO. So this is the journey we've taken so far since 2017. As you can see, there's been lots of progress. It's been quite an active group, and where we are today is landing on these 7 different working groups that are tasked to create the different types of standards that were presented before. What I wanted to talk about on interoperability is what we call distributed ledger networks and the ecosystems they hold. Why is there a need for interoperability? And it's a very simple human need. We need to interconnect and we need to interoperate. And then on a technical perspective, it's the same technically. New technologies need to talk to each other. They need to interconnect. They need to transact, and they need to interoperate to open up these ecosystems. So if you have two ecosystems on the left and the right, how do they talk to each other? And that's the key around standardization to unlock that. So why do you need this? It really simplifies, and it was mentioned before, it fosters openness and innovation. By having this interconnectivity, different technologies can evolve but be compliant and be compatible. So the harmonization comes in, and it's all about connecting to each other and opening those ecosystems up. So from a technology perspective, at the WF, they did a paper very recently. There's really three types of interoperability categories: cross-authentication, oracles, and API gateway. Just very quickly, cross-authentication is when you do things manually yourself within the application. You do a hashed lock between assets. You build an asset bridge, but you have to be available on both sides. And then you can do DLT relays, which is another form of interoperability that allows for that to happen. So this is very, very manual, very heavy. There's oracles. So this is basically linking off-chain aspects to on-chain data. So the oracle sits in the middle and facilitates that. And the logic has to be all agreed, and the consensus and the security has to be all agreed up front, and you have to trust the oracle. So this is another method. And then finally, a third method is the API gateway, which is more enterprise focused. It's how most organizations operate when data transfers happen. So having an API gateway allows you to interconnect to all the different DLTs and the DLNs, the distributed ledger networks. And then the applications can use the gateway as a way to access all the different blockchains. And that's what we work on in the company I work for. So as a comparison, I'm sure these slides are going to be shared, but just to show the different features of different types of interoperability and what does this mean from a technical perspective as well. So I wanted to just show what we're doing within ISO, and as was mentioned by the chair and previously, standards are not going to be prescriptive to define, data packet sizes and handshakes and very technical prescriptive requirements. They're looking, from an ISO perspective, what we're looking to do is make it more governance-led. So allowing a framework, which is what we're calling an interoperability framework, to take different aspects of governance, business, and technical interoperability and allow different technologies to work together to cover all this and be compliant to the standard. So it's been very well received and very well solved in previous iterations. So if you look at cloud, there has been a cloud interoperability standard that was developed, and that's already been published. And so what we're looking to do is leverage the work that's been done previously and apply it to blockchain standards. So from our perspective, what we're looking at is the different facets. So policy, behavioral, transport, syntactic, and semantic interoperability to allow different technologies to interoperate on those different 5 facets that is explained. So the transport facet is a bit technical. So how, from an internet-based space, how can they interoperate on the network front, in terms of the infrastructure? The syntactic means the formats of exchange, the rules on how you're going to actually exchange with the different types of systems. The semantic is, what does that data mean? So how do you understand that type of data when you're doing data transfer between different types of DLTs and blockchains? Behavioral is the governance and the rules. So this could be legal, this could be smart contracts, it could be the governance side on how you interoperate and accept the rules on both ends. And then finally, policy is the frameworks around that. So again, coming into the governance side as well. So this is what is being developed at the ISO level as an interoperability framework to allow technology providers, vendors, developers, innovators to create different types of innovation to comply to the ISO standard. And if it follows the framework, then it will be interoperable in the future. So ISO isn't the only body working on this, it's quite collaborative, but what we're doing is bringing in experts from all the other international standardization organizations, from ITUT, IEEE, IETF, working with each other as peers. And then once a year through the EU INATBA body, we're doing kind of like a check-in just to work out what is happening within the different standardization organizations and how we can collaborate and not reinvent things and make the best use of the expertise and the resources. So it's quite a collaborative way of developing standards globally that's currently happening. And that's all I have. If there's any questions, I'm happy to stay on in the panel, or you can please feel free to email me.
Thank you, Gilbert, for your excellent presentations. I think your presentation covers most difficult or hard areas for the standardization, which are the governance and interoperability. Since we don't have enough time, so as you mentioned that we will collect questions from the audience and we will post some questions at the panel discussion. So next speakers.
Okay, so it kicks into the other speakers and so on. Didn't want to get into all that. Just wanted the focus to obviously be on GV. But before we wrap it up, there's only like a couple things left. It's kind of like the icing on the cake, if you will. So everything that was mentioned, right? Check this out for a second. Here it is. This is straight from the Quant Network. Remember how we're talking about the whole thing of the World Bank and whatnot? Yeah, so a while back, if you weren't aware of it, Quant Network posted this. The World Bank and IMF News, who is, the International Monetary Fund, my God, right? Recognize Quant's unique Overledger interoperability platform that uses an enterprise API-based approach. There's, of course, a full report. I'm going to show you some key things from that, but this is literally taken from it. I mean, this is from March 15, 2021. But you got to keep in mind, how many times content creators out there and so on, nothing against them, but, I'm even guilty of it, right? Mention the whole thing of the World Bank only references two, and it referenced Stellar and obviously Ripple's XRP, right? So Stellar XLM, Ripple's XRP for global stablecoins. I'm not saying that Quant is considered global stablecoin, but it's also nice to see the World Bank reference Quant. So it says Blockchain Interoperability World Bank Group and International Monetary Fund report on blockchain interoperability. Now, when you get into the nitty-gritty of it, here is the full document from the actual PDF that is from the World Bank entitled Blockchain-Interoperability. On page 21 of this PDF, right? It's 62 pages long. Look at this for a second. You don't think Quant is a big deal? Give me a break. Look at this. It says, right in this highlight, I'll start off here actually. Blockchain agnostic smart contract language can be another alternative to code the business logic and map the different underlying blockchain platforms. Goes down and it mentions some of this other stuff, right? Look at this. Digital Asset is working with partners to have DAML-based applications run on Corda, Hyperledger, Fabric, Sawtooth, VMware, etc., etc. But when you go further down, it mentions, some of these things, but it mentions Overledger platform by Quant Network connects various blockchain networks as well as legacy systems. The platform provides a blockchain agnostic operating system for business applications to run. Again, back to the whole reference of this is like, Microsoft for blockchain. It currently supports Hyperledger Fabric, Corda, Ethereum, Bitcoin, and look at this, IOTA. Yeah, IOTA. Why didn't IOTA get mentioned more than it should have? I don't know. There's even EOS and, of course, Ripple. We saw those demos, right? And it says either permissioned or permissionless. It basically provides this whole thing of like Java support, JavaScript SDKs for developers. Quant Network uses its own dApps technology, which are called multi-blockchain dApps or MDApps, right? And then it goes on to just mention some of this other stuff. But look at this. Look at this bottom part. Technical framework. Talks about this whole thing of two dimensions, just in time versus ongoing interoperability versus third party interoperability. In the second dimension, third party can be independent entity, a notary or Oracle service provider, or a blockchain network which the interoperating parties must belong, such as a sidechain or relay chain. And remember how we mentioned, for instance, some of those other examples when it came to, I guess you could say, Oracle and some of the other ones. So it's definitely worth pointing out, and that's straight from the World Bank. All right. In conclusion, before we wrap this up and kick it finally over to the stellar segment, because I know you guys have been waiting for that, the way I look at it is like this. Here's some of my notes, if you will. Why is this all significant? Why did you sit down and watch all that, right? Well, I'll give you numerous examples, but your main key takeaway, other than the RLN and M10 and World Bank and all this stuff, the interview with Gilbert Verdian, should be basically how Quant Network lies in its ability to bridge the fragmented blockchain landscape and what that's all about. There's a breakdown in regards to that in conclusion. So, over 2 years, I've probably been talking about interoperability until I'm blue in the face. I am done talking about that. I want to talk about something else. I want to talk about a unified operating system for business apps. That right there should catch your attention. Because at the end of the day, when we really look at business and even retail, before blockchain and DLT even existed many years ago, who were and still are the two most dominant operating systems out there? It's Microsoft through Windows, and it's basically Apple, right? With their operating systems and even their operating systems for phones and you name it, right? iOS or whatever it's called. So they dominate. Yes, there's other ones that are free like Linux. But we are entering into Web3. And with that said, it's like, who will be the dominant force that connects all the plumbing of Web3? My answer for that, and I think a lot of you guys agree as well, it is Quant. How much is that really going to be worth for the future? Is it going to moonshot overnight? I don't think so. I mean, it's kind of doing something right now. But the point is, Quant, in my opinion, is whether it's $125 or $200 or $300 and so on. If you understand the greater picture, you should look at that as it's literally on sale because of what it connects to. Has a significantly lower supply compared to BTC, 14.88 million tokens compared to BTC, right? I mean, don't get me wrong, BTC, they're both scarce is what my point. And the other point I'm trying to also make is when you look at BTC, I will agree with, some of my friends in regards to the statement. It's kind of like a glorified meme token at this point. Dinosaur technology. It's like still trying to, connect to the internet using America Online. Give me a break. That was the days of Web 1. We are entering into the phase of Web 3. So, a unified operating system, Quant, for business apps. Think about that. By providing a blockchain agnostic operating system, the Overledger itself eliminates the need for developers to learn the specifics of each blockchain. How beautiful that is. They can develop applications once and deploy them across different networks, saving time and resources. Again, how many examples do you see Gilbert Verdian? Some company came to him and so on said, here's what we need to do. Traditionally with, being reliant on another blockchain, we're looking at 11 months of development. Come over to Quant Network and get that done basically in anywhere from 1 to 3 months. That's crazy stuff. Time is money. All right, this real quick. What about wide network support, right? Remember how Gilbert Verdian was talking about the whole thing of trying to reach the masses, mass adoption, take this thing to the mainstream, like he mentioned at the beginning of that, conference? Well, with Quant supporting major blockchains like, sorry to say, Ethereum, Hyperledger Fabric, and even Bitcoin, along with Java and JavaScript SDKs, they themselves cater to this whole notion of reaching large developer bases, familiar, of course, with these specific tools. back to the whole subject of MDApps real quick. Quant networks, MDApps, which are multi-blockchain dApps, allow for applications specifically designed to run across multiple blockchains. This expands the functionality of traditional dApps. Now, in the end, this lasts 3 or 4 key areas. What does it all mean? Not for us, but for the Quant network. What is the greater, bigger picture of things? Great question. What it means is that Quant allows themselves to have tremendous market positioning. May not seem like it's there yet in the short term. If you understand the bigger picture, it will be. Overledger positions Quant network as a leader in blockchain interoperability solutions. As the need for interoperable blockchain application grows, Quant network is well positioned to capture a significant market share. But how about scalability? Back to the examples of RLN, back to the examples of M10. If Stellar can't scale, who can they go to in regards to scalability? They can easily go to the Quant network through M10, through RLN. I understand the whole thing about BSV and so on, and that is great in itself. I'm also looking at it from the perspective of who are they going to go with the partnerships that they currently have. There's no denying that. All right, this other thing. Like I said before, time is money. So Quant Network provides reduced development costs. Again, the whole thing of cutting things like 75%, 50 to 75% reduction costs in regards to development time and so on, right? People have to get paid. If it takes longer, then, that's more out of pocket for you and your company. By simplifying blockchain development, Overledger can attract more businesses and developers to the platform, fostering a larger ecosystem around what the Quant network. I saw some guy on CryptoX and also Reddit, and no offense to these two guys, but they're looking at it from a tunnel vision. They said, basically, I got out of Quant because the only thing that's part of their ecosystem is, if you won't believe this, Galileo protocol with Leo X. I was like, oh my God, you're not understanding the bigger picture. That's just from the retail side of things. That's just such a small market compared to what they're doing with what? The Bank of England, the BIS, Project Rosalind, you name it. Okay, this part. Gilbert Verdin always talks about future-proof. Well, future-proofing. By supporting various blockchains that are agnostic, or the ones that are agnostic to specific technologies, again, back to the examples we gave earlier, in regards to especially, was it Ledger Swarm? Quant Network positions itself for a future where multiple blockchains do what? They coexist. Quant, Gilbert Verdin, all them, they realize it's not just them being the only one out there monopolizing everything. They have to work with other particular blockchains, and they basically do that. So in the end, your key takeaway from all of this should be that overall, Overledger's interoperability capabilities and developer-friendly approach position, yeah, that's right, the Quant network as a key player in bridging the gap between different blockchain networks and fostering a wider adoption of the actual blockchain and distributed ledger technology tech. I think it's going to be huge to see what happens here in the near future. And I think, if anything, when we understand the concept of supply and demand, then all roads also do lead to Quant. They have a lot of partnerships, just as much as the next guy. But if we understand that companies will need to scale, whether it's Ripple, Stellar, and so on, Quant does provide that solution. And that, again, is just scratching the surface. It's just the tip of the iceberg.